After all the cheap stuff you've seen me mess around with, you may be surprised to see that I'm actually also a bona fide audiophile. I know how to appreciate good sound. Now lately, mostly in the creator space, I often see people be prematurely dismissive of what they refer to as snake oil. And more often than not, they're quite right. Still, this is a video of why I don't automatically dismiss snake oil or voodoo and use my ears rather than logic for listening. Are you ready for a can of worms? What we must assume for this is that people do not know things until they do, but often they will never find out. That goes for everything. There's so many things I don't know about kitchen appliances or gardening. When I was a kid, I had a friend and he was convinced the 5 cents guilder coin, we used guilders back then in the 90s, the 5 cents coin was worth more than the 25 cents coin because the 5 cents coin was bigger. Of course, at some point he found out calculus and the value of money, etc., but that was his logic then. I knew he was wrong, he didn't because he hadn't found it out yet. In the late 90s, there were many people that were like, MP3 is better than CD, minidisc is better than CD. They didn't listen, they just assumed because it was more modern and because it was pushed hard that it must be better, not understanding compression or anything regarding the medium. And then there were people that went, the only thing that matters in your audio rig are the speakers. That's what produces the sound, the rest doesn't matter. And then there's the people who go, it's digital, everything digital sounds the same, every CD player sounds the same. And then there's the people that go, all amplifiers sound the same, it doesn't matter which amplifier you use, they all produce the same frequency range, they all sound the same. And then with record players, the record player doesn't matter, the arm doesn't matter, all that matters is the cartridge, that's what turns the grooves into sound. As you're able to see, I'm sort of narrowing it down here, going from completely blatantly obvious to, you can see how people got there, and you can take that further and further. And without explanation and without experience, people will keep believing their own wrongs. Now, when I was a kid, or a teen rather, I didn't care about amplifiers. I just put in my room whatever I thought looked cool. Until at some point my dad bought this really cheap, 5 guilders I think, that's like €2 and also about $2, Harman Kardon 330C receiver at a boot sale. It looked beautiful, he hooked it up, and it replaced a pretty nice Akai amplifier. And I listened and I was like, wow, the rig sounds so much better. Now the 330C is a really good little receiver that sounds amazing, and that to me was the eye-opener where I realized, okay, amplifiers matter. Now a bit later I had slightly more serious audio. I had a Rotel amplifier I believe and a pair of Vivace speakers, and a friend of mine was telling me that cables actually mattered, and I was like, well, how much can it really do? And then he brought 2 cables. One was a solid core silver loudspeaker cable. He knew my taste, he knew I wouldn't like this, and the other was a Siltec, I believe it was, Interlink, and we hooked them up together, and the rig just sounded horrible, like extremely aggressive, in your face, harsh. And I was like, well, why would I want this? He's like, no, you don't. It's both horrible, but that's how much cables can matter. A bit later again, I was at an audio meeting and I had heard about this dude who called himself, in Dutch, Meatball. And he had this theory that was weird with bits of cork in devices and this stuff that looked like mayonnaise. And some people were completely glorifying him and other people were like, he's an idiot. He's ridiculous. And I was tempted to go for the ridiculous side of things here. Until at some point a guy I knew was very knowledgeable about audio. I never heard his rig, but I knew he knew so much and he repaired so much for other people. He had to know something, right? He was like, yeah, it completely transformed my rig actually. And I was like, okay, you know what? This is scary. I don't want to know about this voodoo, but okay, if he says so, I should at least not be completely skeptical. Never got a chance to hear it, so I have no idea if it actually did a thing or not. Then later I was at the same friend who introduced me to interlinks and speaker cables, and he said, sit down and listen. And I listened to his rig, and he changed something, and all of a sudden all of the low end went to the other speaker. He changed something on the right speaker, all of the low end went to the left speaker. I was like, whoa, your low end just disappeared on one side. He's like, yeah, wait. He went to the other speaker, did something as well, all of the low end gone. And then I realized I actually liked it better with a little less low end. It was a bit overwhelming. So I told him, I was like, yeah, you lost some low end, but it's actually nicer this way. He's like, okay, listen. And he did something again, the low end was back. And I was like, what are you doing? And he showed me this little wooden box, like a little treasure chest that he clamped around his speaker cable. It didn't go into the cable, it was just a wooden box. And if you shook it, it would rattle. And it would just completely change the low end of the speaker. And I was like, how does it do that? He's like, I don't know, it's all very weird, but it does something, right? I was like, yeah, it does. Now the speakers he had were the Sonus Faber Garnieri Hommage, and they don't have speaker cloth, they have like wires, like, you know, the things, I don't know the word for this, but the things a whale has for teeth. They are sort of in front of the speakers. And I could actually see at some point when he put the little box on, they would start vibrating. And when he took the box off, they would stop vibrating. So I was like, yep, that does something. I prefer it with the box off, but what on earth? How does this do something? It's not even touching anything. It's just clamped around your speaker cable. Same friend a bit later told me about some theory by a guy named Peter Belt. And Peter Belt goes to your place. He has people that do it for him all over the world. I think he's an American. Goes to your place and touches your devices and your windows and your cabinets with this ointment, so little that you can't even see it. And he has these silver or gold stickers that he writes A+B on, or your name or the brand of the amplifier. I don't know what he does. He goes around and gives demos. He's like, yeah, try this, see if you like it. Even works in cars. And often people actually hear a major difference. I heard this story, I was like, nope, no. I mean, I've heard a lot, but no, just absolutely not. Same friend told me that one of the people working with the Peterbilt system went to his place, did the thing, and my friend could swear his sound was worse, way worse. And he was like, yeah, so it didn't work for me, but at least, you know, I was surprised it did something at all. And I was like, yeah, sure, dude, sure, come on, seriously. I had no reason not to trust him, but it just didn't make any sense to me. Sort of half forgot about the story. Half a year later, I walked into my local record store. Now, the owners of my record store are not audiophiles. They don't know much about audio. They don't really know good sound, but they have like these flat Bang & Olufsen speakers that hang up against the wall, all the way up in the corners. They're hooked up to, I think it was an Akai amplifier back then, and they sound, well, the bass is all the way cranked up. I think the treble is too, but it sounds all right in the record store. It sounds pleasant, but they're way too far up. They're way too far apart. There's 4 of them on both sides of the store. It's a mess. You have no stereo imaging. It's just, you know, but it's surprising how okay it sounds. So I was just digging through my records, through their records actually, trying to find something cool. And the speaker was right there above me, like near the ceiling. And I was just standing there. I didn't know the music. I wasn't paying attention. I thought to myself, it sounds better than I'm used to here. So I called one of the guys. I was like, hey, dude, do you have a new amplifier or what? And he was in the kitchen. He didn't even know I was there yet. I just came in. It took me like seconds to find out something had changed. And he came running out of the kitchen. He's like, I'm so happy you said that. He's like, you're not going to believe the story. I was like, wait. Immediately rang a bell. Ointments and stickers. He's like, just ointments. Do you know the guy? I was like, I don't know the guy. I know the story. Tell me everything. And he told me like, okay, so this guy came in. And he just talked about music with us. Really nice guy, like nothing weird. And he said, can I demonstrate something? And the guy was like, yeah, sure. And he went behind the counter and he just touched the cabinets that hold all of the CDs. The CDs are not in the cases. They just have these plastic sleeves with all the CDs in it. They're right behind the counter. And he just touched them a few times with this ointment. And he stepped in front of the counter again. He didn't touch the audio. And he was like, what do you think? And the record store owner was like, I think it sounds a lot better, but I don't get it. Why would it sound better? And he was like, well, I don't get it either, but this is how it works. And, you know, tell your friends. This is the Peterbilt system. And so I asked him again. He touched nothing but the cabinets with the ointment. He's like, nothing at all, just that. And he said, I could swear I heard a difference, but I wanted to see your response. That's why I didn't tell you. So I just came in, not knowing anything had changed. Immediately heard the difference in a rig that doesn't sound good with music that I don't know very well, without even paying attention. And that just opened my mind. It blew my mind. I was like, okay, if that works, if this is a thing, and if it actually improves a mediocre rig, then I'm willing to believe. And I don't mean I'm going to believe in Peterbilt. I don't have anything by Peter. I think actually this amplifier has some of his stickers, but I didn't put them on there. I bought it like this. I didn't invest in Peterbilt at all, but I was like, okay, you know what? From now on, I'm just going to use my ears, not judge. And I tried loads of tweaks. We had like extremely expensive power filters here, €3,500 power filters that didn't do as much as a cheap €15 filter. Turning my computer's power supply off actually did a lot more. And I've had these little discs that you could put on plugs, like your headphone plug or whatever. Didn't do a thing. But then, Akiko Audio is a brand, and they make stickers that you put in your audio, and they make filters that you put close to your power supply or your power strip. And they have all of these rocks in them, esoteric nonsense. And as far as I know, the owner of the brand also doesn't really know why it works. He also just probably tries it. I can't promise this, but it's the impression I got when talking to him. And I have some Akiko audio stuff. Now, Akiko is the same brand that also made that little wooden treasure chest that I heard. And even though I didn't like what that did, it was interesting that it did something. I had demos by Akiko, I heard it. They know a thing or two about audio. They don't go promising that a bad rig is going to sound good. They have a great rig to start with that sounds awesome, and they can tweak it just a little bit with their stuff. I have their Akiko audio sticker. It's called the tuning chip on my cartridge. It doesn't do as much with this style as before. This is the Goldring 2400. Before I had a Goldring 2500 that completely came to life. It was just completely lacking without the sticker and lovely with the sticker. And I have a tuning stick, I think it's called, on my power strip that actually does improve the sound. It creates a bit of air, it creates a bit of stereo imagery. It's not plugged in. It makes no sense to plug it in. I think the plug is fake actually, but they give it a plug so people actually believe it does something, but it's not a filter. This is very weird stuff. And I would have never ever considered buying into it if I couldn't have first tried it at home before buying. Well, the sticker I bought is €5, but I could try the rest before buying. And if I hadn't heard that weird stuff at the record store that I couldn't explain. So from that moment on, I actually just try audio and not dismiss snakeoil, even though it's obviously snakeoil, it's obviously voodoo. There's loads of tweaks that people say are snakeoil, like cables and whatever, that actually have a clear explanation. But this is proper snakeoil, yet I was unprepared and I could hear it work. And it's kind of hard to deny it for yourself then. So that made me a listener rather than someone who tries to use science to explain audio. We'll get back to science in a second because I'm a firm believer in science, but there's a fun story I had with a scientist friend. He came over and I told him that power cables, you know, the ones that you plug in the back of the device and into the power socket, matter a lot. He's like, no, they don't. I was like, yeah, they do. He's like, no, they just don't. They can't. He tried to explain to me. I was like, I'm not interested because I don't understand electronics. I don't know anything about electronics. Sit down, listen. So we went changing cables. I did this with loads of people, untrained ears, trained ears. Everyone could hear the same differences. And of course, I'm not going to tell the guy what he's supposed to hear because then he's biased, right? So he was listening and listening and listening. And he said, I don't hear it. I was like, really? So I plugged again and again. 2.5 hours later, he's like, I don't hear it. What do you hear? So I was like, okay, well, since you don't hear it, this is what I hear. And he's like, yeah, I've been hearing that for 2.5 hours, but I wouldn't believe it. And I thought it was just me fooling myself. He still doesn't believe that it works, which is funny to me. But you can see how science can make someone blind and deaf as well. Doesn't mean I don't believe in the science behind audio. I'm a huge believer in science anyway. I'm double vaxxed and boosted by now. Yay. And I love how we can see and hear and measure and search for things these days. But what science does is find stuff that it doesn't know yet. Once it's figured out, science is done with it and it goes on to something else or goes more in depth. Once everything is known, once everything is figured out, science will disappear. It's never going to happen, of course. But this is the thing with science. They don't know. That's why they're doing research. So you can't say it can't be true because it can't be scientifically proven. There's always a yet, right? Remember, the story is about the guy thinking the coin had more value because it was bigger until he understood. The people saying amplifiers don't matter until they heard it. This goes with everything. You need to figure it out first or talk to the right people or get the right demonstration. It's the same with something completely different. Cats. I don't like cats. You just haven't met the right cat. They're not all selfish assholes, right? You got to match with everything. So people should be open-minded to stuff like this. Not to everything. There's things that are ridiculous. But you should be open-minded to things that are safe to try. Because not everything can be scientifically proven. That said, everything that my ear can hear should technically be measurable. Let's be honest. It's always changes in frequency. The way the music gets, the sound waves get into the room is the only difference that you can hear. So it has to be that. So it has to be measurable. But the problem is, people that just listen and don't go for pure science, and people that go for pure science and if it doesn't measure right, it can't sound right, they are worlds apart. They don't work together. I would love to sit down with someone who has all of the equipment to measure perfectly, to measure all of the things, not just the things like frequency range and dynamic range, but everything. Get me all the measuring equipment and then we can try and measure tweaks. I'd love to do that, but they're usually so skeptical that these two just don't get together. And since I'm not a scientist, and I'm someone who wants it to sound good, not measure good. I just sit down and listen, and I change what I think is an improvement. There's also things I hear that I don't buy into because they're just too expensive, right? There's things that I think are an upgrade, like this. That's a waste of money. This one came with a record player. Yeah, it does work. It's an Allsonic DS250 disc stabilizer. Yeah, it does work, but it's a $300 accessory. And the difference is this big. I would never ever buy into that. But I'm not going to get rid of it because it does work. There's plenty of things you shouldn't buy into, but there's loads of nice little tweaks that are worth your time that you can just try out cheaply or that you can borrow from someone and just listen and see if you like the improvement. And try not to use logic. Try to use your ears. And if you can apply logic to it, if you can measure it, by all means do it, because I love to see some scientific proof for some of the things that I can hear. But I am really happy that I had that experience where I walked into that record store and could hear a difference that I couldn't explain because it completely changed the way I listen. And it makes audio more fun because I can just accept that something sounds better, even if it doesn't make sense. And that's great. That's what the aim should be. Making music, because music's more important than audio, making music sound as good as you can within your budget. So this is why I don't dismiss snake oil, because some snake oil may actually work. And it's worth for everyone to give it a listen, especially if it doesn't cost you money. I completely understand not buying into it, but if you get a chance to hear it, go for it. What bad could it do, right? Anyway, that was my rant. That was my can of worms. I will probably be sorry about this, but I scripted it, sort of. I rambled for half an hour or so, and I hope people will listen just a bit. Just listen and see what you find. It could be worst case, it will be interesting. Okay? Have a good day.